Hello and welcome to Business on the Wire. In the wake of the gruesome Delhi gang rape and murder in December 2012, US-based director and creator Ram Devineni created Priya, branded as India's first female superhero, a rape survivor to combat gender-based violence through the medium of comic strips. Since then, Priya has taken on issues like sex trafficking and, in the pandemic-struck year, of course, COVID and mental health. The character was named Gender Equality Champion by UN Women, and the team has now released an animated short film along with the comic. Joining me now are some of the voices that were on that show. Ram, thank you so much for joining in and having this conversation. Mrunal, thank you. You're the voice of Priya, so we'll have lots to chat about as well. But Ram, let me start by asking you this, because I know the genesis of the character came in the backdrop of what happened in India in the December 12 gang rape and murder. Unfortunately, though, subsequently the numbers have been anything but inspiring. And I know that you made the point that in 2012 it looked like we were ready for some kind of a cultural shift. Since then, the numbers in terms of sexual violence or violence and assault have actually gone up. Do you think the characters managed to travel the arc of what has been a disappointing journey for India, at least statistics-wise, in terms of gender violence?
Yeah, we've always focused on societal perceptions of survivors, because I know actually getting at the core root of violence and sort of why certain things happen in terms of violence towards women, that's much more complicated to really address. Like, one of the things I think has changed is, this is again speaking very generic, but I think what has definitely changed is perception of survivors. And that you can clearly see not only in the media, but towards people's views towards survivors. And then this sort of eventually equates to perceptions of women in India. I think those two kind of work together in conjunction. And I know when we released the first comic, there was a major discussion. This was, in 2014 when we released it, about 18 months later. There was still a big discussion in India and also in the media about rape and gender violence. And the focus was on about perpetrators, the crimes, the process, and all that. There was very little focus on survivors and the healing process that they have to go through. Mm-hmm. And I know when we released the comic, there was definitely a discussion at that time, because the comic went viral, about survivors and how societies, or lack of support from society, was really hindering their recovery process. Also, in a sense, empowering certain men to commit more rape because they knew they could get away with it. Yeah. So that discussion definitely happened. In the long term, this takes a while. Gender violence, perceptions, things like that, cultural shifts, those you might not see for a generation. But all I can say is, when those protests happened in Delhi and all over where I was involved in, you could see that young generation energized and activated. So that generation, 20 years from now, will be that generation that will take the lead on this.
Mm. Mrunal, when you hear about a concept like this, you're immediately drawn to it for so many reasons that Ram lined out. But tell me what it is that, hooked you to become part of this and to be the voice of Priya. What drew you to it the most?
Is very special to me because, Mitali, in this entire lockdown, I realized it's very simple, because I have children around me, my niece and nephew. And they were so affected by this pandemic. They were so scared as to what is happening. The question was if we would ever be able to step out of the house and meet our grandparents and, other family members and friends. So I always wanted to do something for children. And because there's so much fear, there's so much anxiety all over, I felt like this animated short film was so necessary for the kids. Not just that, but it's about time. In India, we need to have a woman superhero, because, from what I take, Priya Shakti, the comics, when I read it, there's so much courage in Priya. She's this teenage girl and she's just like empowering and enlightening the entire tribe. And that's what connected me the most with Priya. I felt like this is the time, this is the opportunity that I can do little bit, I can contribute little bit to the society and especially to the kids and their mental health. So I immediately got on board, and we have the women's team, the entire team except Ram and Sid. Everybody is like girl power. So nothing like that. And I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that Priya reaches each and every corner of the globe and empowers women and gives, she should just motivate women to take bold, actions against any kind of violence, be it, acid attack, rape. There are so many things happening in the world. So I felt this was a golden opportunity I couldn't say no to, and I immediately got on board.
Fantastic. Tell me, Mrunal, what were you thinking of when you talk about times of lockdown and the impact on children and mental health? What is it that you wanted to bring to the character? Because I read through so many write-ups about Priya, and it said that for this particular pandemic year, she did a bit of a pivot, a style shift. She became softer, calmer. What did you think of when you were fashioning Priya in your mind and bringing these aspects into it?
There were times where the kids were sitting at home. There was no school. It was virtual schooling. They were sitting on their computer. And suddenly, my niece, she said, my dad doesn't have time for me. Everybody's parents are at home. And why is my father not with me? And he doesn't allow me to go out. He doesn't. So I felt like it was very important for her to understand what her dad does. He's a government employee. He serves the nation. And I think through Priya, when Priya takes Meena, the character, the cute little one, to show on a flying tiger, which was again yet another a fascinating character I would want to have. She takes Meena and she shows that what exactly is your mother doing. She's a nurse. No matter how scary the situation is outside, still your mother has taken that one step to step out of the house and help the patients who are suffering from COVID-19. So when the mother returns home, similarly when the father returns home, my niece was so proud of her father. And I think this one gesture is it's required. And India, sometimes I feel like the kids doesn't know what exactly their parents are doing, what exactly their job is. When they understand that what difficulties they go through, what their workplace is like, they feel like, okay, Spider-Man superhero hai, but my father is also a superhero. So that was the small agenda that I wanted to convey through, we wanted to convey through this short film, that superhero doesn't need to wear a cape around, right? There might be a superhero right next to you, standing in front of you. All you need to do is just be alert and just appreciate and just say, thank you. Thank you for serving our nation. Thank you for being my superhero. And I'm proud to say that my father is an inspiration to so many. And like many years down the line, I would be really happy. My dad is a banker, so he worked all this pandemic. I'm proud because, 10 years down the line, when I narrate the story of COVID-19, I'm going to be like, okay, my father really helped the nation and he was stepping out irrespective of all of this. So this was a small gesture. And through your interview, Mitali, I really want to, like all the kids, if the kids are not watching this interview, I request their parents, please make them read the comics. Not just that, but watch this small short animated film and make their children realize that pandemic it's a small phase. It's going to be over. We're going to have a vaccine soon and we're going to start playing, but all we need to do as of now is to just wear a mask and take care of ourselves and maintain social distancing. And meanwhile, do not forget to say thank you to your mom and dad, because they are making a huge difference in this society.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you, picked a 10-year window, Mrunal, because in 10 years, we should hopefully certainly be done with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Let me ask you to weigh in all these elements, because I think this year has sort of opened up so many more parameters. As Mrunal and I were talking, there's There's children, there's mental health, there's also domestic violence, frankly, that's really spiked in nations like India. And interestingly, you've also gone on to get a character like Priya to ally with her Pakistani counterpart, which has really been, a great sort of coming of two powers together. So,
Burqa Avengers.
Yeah. Walk me through, Ram, the kind of elements that were going through your mind when, you were working through this year.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about this as opposed to the previous comics is there's a lot of research that goes into it. But the research we put into it, other than talking with doctors, is we were all living through this. So our experience is vital in developing this story. And that's one of the reasons we changed the style, because we wanted this to be more universal, more appealing to younger audience, to kids. And we did that pivot with the style, because the previous one was a little harsher, more for teenagers, dealt with much more complicated topics. And this comic touches on everything that we've experienced in 2020 with the pandemic. From the beginning, when everything started, from everything being shut down is explored in the comic. The loneliness that we felt, the isolation we felt, the work that the healthcare workers put in. The idea of Burqa Avenger is the virus doesn't respect borders, doesn't really care if you're Indian, Pakistani, or Chinese. I mean, that's where it's spread from China all over the world, and it didn't really matter. It was agnostic when it came to that. And then there's a whole environmental aspect to this, because one of the things we noticed with the lockdown is basically the air in Delhi became clean in probably decades, and these are all sort of explored in the comic. Is in the comic, birds come flying back into the city that were never there, that haven't been there for generations, because everything was clean now. So all of these are touched upon, and I mean, I look at this comic book not only as a great form of storytelling, and the film as well, but as a historical document. I mean, you have to kind of look at it that way. Like, look back. I mean, obviously we can't, but 100 years ago, when the Spanish flu infected everyone, there was what can you name, created artistically, that documented it? In fact, none of us knew about the Spanish flu until this pandemic hit. So I think this comic book and film, a decade from now, 100 years from now, it will be a historical document, a creative way of understanding psychologically, emotionally what we went through.
It's also interesting for your industry specifically, Ram, because overnight we were all forced to collaborate in ways that we didn't think possible. I mean, geographical and physical proximity was important. Why don't you walk me through first your experiences, and then I'll ask Mrunal as well. What was it like collaborating in different continents, actually, not even different cities?
Yeah, I mean, our whole team was spread out all over, not only in India, but in the US, from Los Angeles to Atlanta to New York to Mumbai to Delhi. And I think that's sort of attribution of basically where technology has gone, and the fact that we can work remotely in a creative way. Because that's always the challenge is, in the old philosophy of creativity is you bring everyone into the room, into a film set or whatever, and there's collaboration and energy, and that produces something out of that. But here, there's a room that we all came into, except these Zoom rooms where we would talk and develop it. But I think creativity is very fluid. And I also believe creativity, especially during the pandemic, is something that was necessary. I know for the creative, something assuring for us, knowing there was an end goal for this, something very beautiful and powerful that would come out of it, and really motivated us. I mean, the film industry is, and all creative industries are being challenged because whatever's being created was already in the pipeline, and there's no new stuff that's being produced. And I think there's uncertainty of the future. You can't make movies without a distribution channel, things like that. These are the things that you have to kind of plan out, and everything is up in uncertainty now.
Mrunal, I was speaking with Malika Sarabhai some time back, and she said that's what you miss as an artist. You miss the rasa of, the energy of your viewer and you giving it back to them, especially in live performances. That must have made it tougher for you
Yes.
as well, not to get, that energy back while trying to voice this person and trying to build this character.
Natalia, I was so scared because I have never done this before. Except I used to dub for a couple of TV commercials before I got into a Bollywood. Because that was just a way of, I felt like through voice modulation, maybe I can perform better. But performing, giving voice to Priya was another task, especially when you are in Dehradun, in no network, shooting for a film, in the middle of a film. And we decided that, and it took us 1 hour. We got on a Zoom call. The team explained me what this character is all about, what are her characteristics, and also the fact that she's going to be a little gentle with the kids. She's going to be very soft. That softer tone is very important because she, the kids needs to feel that warmth from Priya. She should
Yeah.
feel like an elder sister, who's telling the younger one, "ऐसे नहीं करते, ऐसे करते हैं, ऐसा होता है." So I was literally imagining my elder sister when she explains me things, and I dubbed. It took us an hour. It was fun. It was a fun session. At that time, the animation wasn't ready. The only thing that I had for reference was the storyboard, the pictures, what it would look like. Uh, then when I finally got the first draft, I saw it and I felt like there are 2-3 places where I need to redub it. So I redubbed those because when you have Vidya Balan in front of me and the little one Saira, she has done fabulous job in the film. That Meena's character, she's done 100% justice to that, and how expressive she is. I mean, I feel like that kid, she's the winner. She won my heart. So I read a few things, and also I realized that when I was talking to Sid Finney, who's the illustrator, he mentioned that Mrunal, when I was trying to sketch Priya, when I was trying to make Priya, she kind of resembles, like I had you in my vision while making the animation stuff, and that made me feel really good. It feels good when you type on Google, India's first woman superhero, animated superhero, and Priya shows up. It makes me feel so overwhelmed. I can't tell you. It's a great feeling. And I'm happy that, all these things which makes small difference in the society, it makes me happy. It gives me good night's sleep. I feel satisfied.
No, fantastic, Mrunal. I sometimes feel though that perhaps we need those kind of role models for our boys as well, because we're working hard to make our girls think differently. But I think it's also time to start talking to our boys. But Ram, let me, sort of just shift away from this conversation a little bit to ask you your thoughts on filmmaking generally. I know Mrunal's just finished the shoot, but there's this big question mark on the Indian film industry specifically on, how they go on to shoot in the future, whether this is the death of cinema halls and that kind of large viewing. Is everyone going to go into their laptop and their Netflix and watch movies there? Do you think this is just a phase and then we, go back to what was our normal, or do we now create a new normal?
Well, I always believe the film industry was, in a sense, it's become segmented. There's only basically two categories left. You either have to make this massive films like The Avengers or a big Bollywood movie, or you have to make kind of smaller productions which get streamed eventually. Like that middle ground is slowly dying away because there's just no distribution for that. This is even before the pandemic, but the pandemic I think has kind of almost put the nail in the coffin for that.
Yeah.
So I think filmmakers have to be just smarter in what they do, or they have to just end up doing these massive films with like 6 nations and production companies all over the world to produce it and make it happen. It's sad because I think that small middle ground is where the real tougher roles, the more complex characters and stories are often made, and those will be kind of diminishing. but I mean, we'll have to see what all these streaming services. I mean, there is now this renaissance in streaming services, and I'm a documentary filmmaker, so there's just been enormous amount of demand to make series and documentaries, true life stuff, based upon, to fill that niche market, because there's just not enough quote unquote content available for that.
Yeah. Do you think it's also time for industries like the ones we have in India to rethink what they do with AR and VR? Because you've worked a lot with augmented reality, but I don't think India's quite high up on the curve with that yet.
Well, I'll put on my Sahas face activity. I mean, I think AR and VR is still a niche. There's no commercial. I mean, there's no what you call this kind of this game or whatever that would basically push AR VR into like mass production. Sometimes, like with video games, when it first started, they were driven by the games. There was like a certain game that kids wanted and they wanted to play. So that was what was driving them towards buying all these consoles, Nintendo and so on. Like Super Mario Brothers is the perfect example of that. There's really nothing like that in AR or VR right now to really do that. So what's happened is become a niche market. There's definitely festivals, industry for it, a lot of marketing use for it. I think Snapchat, Instagram, all of these have kind of really filled that niche market for AR, and VR has its own industry for that as well. But these are very small. I don't think it's going to reach mass market production yet. I know there's a Star Wars game that's coming out in VR, or it's already out, so that could draw a lot of people to the VR headsets and things like that. But it takes a little time. Yeah.
Mrunal, any changes that you've observed as an artist? You know how people are working very hard on creating holograms now. Do you think it'll get to the point where your co-actor is, not there, but there's a hologram for you to perform with?
Oh my God, I don't know. It's very difficult.
Unreal.
But unreal, absolutely. I think there are a lot of changes, and talking about 2020, oh my God, there are so many things that has happened. Talking about shifting to OTT, to so many things. I'm just as an artist, I feel like I'm just getting used to the new normal.
Yeah. Super. We are out of time, but thank you both so much for joining in today. I have a personal request. If Priya, goes on her next escapade, I'd love for her to talk about financial independence for women. I think it's not talked about enough, and I think it's essential in the Asian context for women to learn.
Thank you.
Stand on their own feet. But
thank you,
power
Mitali.
to the both of you for having brought out this kind of a product. And I encourage anyone who's watching to please tune in and watch the video and the short film that Mrunal talked about. But thank you both for your time. Tiger Man, aka Ram, and Mrunal, aka Priya. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitali. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Ciao.